presented by the Deering Acting Studio.
Alrighty, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Mornings with Matt. Joey, I don't know, I fell in love with the song all over again this morning, dude.
Thank you.
It's a beautiful song.
I really feel like it's a morning show. Yeah.
It's like, I dare you not to just at least bobble your head during that song.
Our guest was bobbling his head.
It's hard not to.
Yeah.
Speaking of guests and speaking of things that are awesome, we've got Mr. Jim Davidson on the show today.
Hey, so nice to see you guys, Matt, Brian, Joe. It's so good to be with you this morning.
So,
thank you. Such a blessing.
I'm loving your bio here. You're a man of God. We definitely are in alignment with some of your ideas and values.
Right.
I'm particularly drawn to the idea of shalom. You want to talk to me a bit about that? Because I totally agree, but I think it's like one of the hardest things for human beings, especially myself.
It's particularly hard at this time. You know, I'm on a walk with my brother, and we figured out at some point that a lot of decisions we make, if we're in our self-will, we kind of assume that God is with us. You know, if we're have faith and what have you, we believe that if we go a direction, God goes with us, and that's the way it is. And I can tell you in my life that I made that assumption, and I think it's the wrong assumption, at least in my belief. So the way I look at it is the way we look at it, or I look at it, is this: if you make a decision or go in a certain direction, you're making a decision to get into a new form of acting, make a business decision, whatever, and if there's peace in it, and there's grace in it, and it's simple. You know, God is simple. God is a God of simplicity. So if it's simple and it flows and everything just happens the way it's supposed to, God's in it.
Yeah.
Conversely, and you want to be in that river of shalom, right? You want to flow down the river, right? And if there's, always you're fighting, timing isn't right, things are going wrong, the odds are you need to really pray about that. Make sure that God is there with you and encouraging you to fight that battle, because my experience has been, if I follow that path, and that is, don't just do something because I think it's the right idea to do, but really follow the path of shalom, then you can follow through with it. Because the point of shalom is that shalom is supernatural, right? God's shalom is supernatural, and it's more than just peace and hi and hello. It's tranquility, it's prosperity, it's harmony, it's an absence of discord. So that kind of shalom, which we really need right now, that kind of shalom is only possible when you rely, I believe, on God and seek his will, and at the same time try to pay attention, be sensitive to where you're fighting it. And if you're grinding it,
I like this idea. This is something in my wording and verbiage that I talk about when doors close. God's going to close the door.
Right.
And when he does, you stop trying to knock it down. Instead, look for which doors he's opening. Because converse to that is, sometimes he wants you to knock on a door and not go in. He wants you to knock on some doors to try things. In other words, we still have the footwork that we've got to do, but if the door doesn't open, man, and if you keep battling to try to get through it, like you said, knock it down. I mean, it's time to move on. Well, and you'll never knock down a door that God doesn't want you to open. He'll knock you down instead. I also want to be clear with everybody, because there's this idea of shalom and peace and tranquility, but it doesn't mean don't do stuff. So like it doesn't mean, because life isn't supposed to be easy.
Yeah.
Life is,
Correct.
Life is full of obstacles and full of challenges, and God puts a lot of those in our way. They're all teachers is the way you can look at the obstacles in your life. But God is in it when it's good. I mean, that's another thing that I say a lot is God is good, So when you feel good, it's like that's what God is.
Yeah, and Matt, that's how I ended up back here. If we remember, and that was the exact advice you gave me. I was in youth ministry and trying to figure that out, but there was this job that I really wanted, and it just kept not happening and I just wasn't feeling good about where I was, and that was your advice to me at that time, was just like, hey, maybe a door's being closed, you know, like just be praying on it. And this is before even asking about the lighthouse and stuff like that. This was just you advising me about the church stuff. And then literally like the next week, that's when you were like, hey, this opportunity came up. Would you like to come back? And it was so clear through all the things we're doing now and the way that you've been able to teach us and we're helping people, that this is where God wanted me. And
truthfully, that door, who knows in your life? I mean, because we don't get to know the future. So obviously, ideally, you know, you're here forever, or even if you are here forever, doesn't mean you can't be doing youth ministry also.
Of course.
But just the idea of when we break that down, it actually comes back to your why was not good. Mm-hmm. And so you were going down this path even though it's a good path, but for the wrong reason, God's going to go, no, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for you to go down, you know, the right path for the right reason.
And that's so true. And what happens when you're in that flow, like when Brian made that decision, there's favor that happens. Good things happen. God is a God of favor. All of a sudden things start to fall into place, and it's the way it would be. And I've found that most of the time when I end up not in God's will and have to back out, it's because I'm chasing money. I'm chasing my ego. It seems like a good thing to do, but again, when I start to feel that, you know, things are just I'm working too hard at it, you know, it's time to time to try another door.
Yeah, and this idea of peace and you know, and the feeling of goodness, it's actually it's in a lot of religions, you know, and it's in a lot of practices and ideas. Yes. It's prevalent everywhere, and I think one really good example of this recently for us is this show in the morning has felt good. It's felt appropriate, felt something that we should keep doing. So we've been doing it. But what's interesting is we've set up the setup here. We've reset it up, I don't know, 75 times or something like that. It never quite felt right. And just 2 days ago, it felt right. It was like, hey, I think we finally found the thing that, like, this feels peaceful to sit down the way we have it now. And what's interesting is we had my wife came in yesterday. She hasn't been in the studio for a few weeks, and she saw the new setup, and she just couldn't stop talking about how amazing it was. She's like, babe, I can't stop telling you how amazing your setup is. And I was like, what's incredible, Leanne, is that we already had that setup 6 months ago. It just wasn't peaceful. And now we found a peace about this room, you know, and we found a very good use for something that wasn't being used before. And so we found, like, it feels like we're in shalom. Yeah.
And I noticed the setup was different from the beginning, and I didn't say anything to Joey, but, you know, from the other shows. And when I saw it, I go, you know, this is neat. And now that it's great to have you all three there together. I think the interplay where you can, I don't know. All I can tell you is it works for me too.
And what's funny is we've always all three been here. We just didn't have a very good angle of each other.
Yeah, exactly. It was like you were angled out. And, you know.
Well, and that goes right into within the piece. It's beyond our understanding. It's God's, and it's perfect.
Correct.
Right. So like the three of us being able to do this, and it's no coincidence now that it was all set up in the right timing, that your wife and Michelle could come in and do it in that way, and feel it out, and going into just dedication. I'd like to take it aside and back into sort of acting and dedication. That's on you and Joey have crushed to make that happen. Like, and that's that I'm never gonna just be satisfied mindset. Like, I'm gonna keep growing and keep working things, because like you'll adjust little things. And honestly, I'd come in and like I barely even noticed it, and sometimes didn't even notice it at all, like most times. So I'd be like, you'd be like, see this, you know, and it's like a chord thing or something that I didn't even notice. But
and that's the thing that I'm working on with you, actually, because everybody can take a note of this. If you decide, you make this decision to become present. And I always tell, like, my wording for Brian is always bring yourself into the room. And what I mean by that is get off of your own agenda for 1 second and come down into the space. And then you notice little things. And when you notice these little things, you can either compliment or you can correct or you can, you know, make adjustments and whatnot. And Joey and I had a really good analogy thing happen when he surprised us one night and he painted our floors in the theater. He repainted everything black.
Okay.
And so it looked really beautiful. And I came in and I was surprised. I was like, wow. And I'm in really early, so I walk in with my socks, and I pointed something out to him for him to understand a concept, actually, because it sounds like a jerk move, but it wasn't. I walk in and I go, hey, look at that. And he's like, what? I go, there's a white speck right there. There's one white speck. And he, you know, he looks at me and I was like, and I'm not pointing this out to say you didn't do a good job, because it looks amazing in here. But I'm pointing it out to let you know that this is what my eye sees. I look for always, is there a way to get better? But only because you did such a good job is this white speck noticeable. Because if you hadn't done it, there'd have been 100 white specks, and this one would have never been noticed. And so as we progress, as we move forward, now that we're in this really nice, peaceful space, my brain is already going to, you know, different technologies, new ideas that we're not going to invest in right now. We don't need to. But now I can actually live in that creative space because I'm not bogged down by the chords and the wrong angles and the other things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%.
You remember that day, Joey? Were you offended at first, or did I get the point across immediately?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I remember it vaguely, so I don't remember my exact reaction, but I can't imagine I took it well. I'm a very reactive person, especially back then. So.
Well, hopefully I complimented you enough up front.
I mean, but, I knew you were like super happy about it or whatever. So so I don't think I like mistook it that way. But you're right. I mean, I guarantee I probably was like,
what
really,
the heck?
Like, the white speck.
Jim, is that a concept you understand? Like the idea of getting 1% better? Because I believe in this concept daily, to be finding a way to be becoming better, you know, and it might be becoming a better dad, or becoming closer to God, or becoming better at work, or whatever. But if you're looking to seek to become 1% better every day, then you're just going in the right direction. So that's something I live by and believe in. Do you agree?
I do agree with that. And I also, what I've tried to do, which I didn't used to do, the D word, I call it, the discipline word, used to be one that I just, you know, I can do it. I don't have to, I just show up. I don't have to study. You don't have to spend a lot of time with it. And part of that came from that I was blessed that things came quickly to me. Mm-hmm. But the reality is discipline really is freedom. And I try to build discipline in every day to developing what you're talking about on specific things where I have time, where I focus, and I just try to get better. And
you know, I used to do that same thing, and
you can get, you know, there's always something new to learn, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I used to do that same thing with being able to show up, and I believe it's more of a curse than a blessing, actually. Mm-hmm. So because when you can get away with it, you really have to mentally overcome.
Yes.
You know, to go, hey, there's a discipline in line, because it's not like I didn't do good. It's just I didn't do as good as I know I could have done. And as soon as you start holding yourself to that new standard, life changes completely, which is great. Hey, so let's dive into some of your ideas here and questions. You want to talk about podcasting and maybe even like a transition or just some additional work that you'd like to start doing?
Yeah, I just think, we're spending so much time now in this method. We're auditioning at home. There's so much. I've thought about having a radio show, which, is a whole different area and investment and what have you. And so I guess my questions are around, if you're going to develop a presence, if you're going to get good at doing it at home or in a specific location, it's got to have a professional. What level of professionalism is required? And so that's where my question center is, kind of around that whole development of podcasting. Is radio still valid? And if we were to develop a podcast process or a way of just plugging into the industry, what would that look like? What's the best way to do it? And what would the technology look like? how high tech does it need to be? You know, all that kind of thing.
Well, so. I gotta say, just to start, you're the best sounding guest we've ever had.
Got that
so you're doing something right.
Yeah. Here's the deal. So I can answer for you, but I should really answer for everybody.
Sure.
And be careful about what I say here. The truth is, it needs to be about as high tech, I think, as you're willing to learn how to use.
Right. Okay.
We had a really, really high tech soundboard here for a long time. We used to have a really expensive camera that by the time we learned how to use it was already out of date. This was probably 8 years ago, before I learned that discipline word. And so so now it's like, you know, we've got some really nice things, but everything that we've purchased now has become, does it enhance the show? And in what way? And does it enhance our classes? It's all about the experience of the user. So for us, it's like, this isn't about me. This is about how do we deliver this to the people we're talking to. And so I like to also say there's no excuse for not getting started. So if you're out there right now and you're listening, you can actually do a podcast on your phone. Like, you could do that, and it's not going to be as nice or sounding as this or anything, but it will be something. It'll be a start, and you can start working on your voice. I know, Jim, I read in your bio here that you spent like 60 hours working and practicing someplace in California, right?
Yeah, I did. Well, that was a radio show. That was a live radio show, and then I probably spent $20,000 on VO classes, two different studios in Burbank and Orange County. So, I mean, you know, you can just always spend money in that. And part of it is learning how to just project. I mean, it's one thing to have a voice. It's another thing to be able to translate it into a commercial, or to be able to adjust it to the right circumstance and things like that. So
yeah, you know, and your voice is amazing.
Is super critical.
Yeah, your voice is amazing, and you've got a really good like vibe going and whatnot. But see, that's an investment. It's something I look at 20 grand. I'm like, that's not that much. I mean, it sounds like a lot, but really, you know, you're just training to become a better you, and then now you have this skill that can be translated, you know, exponentially. So. So for you, like Joey said, your mic right now, it's good. You know, like you're fine.
The sound, this mic's fine.
Yeah, the sound is fine. I say, like, you want to upgrade when you're forced to. So you start to do a sound, you try to do something special with it, and you're like, I ran into a limitation on my equipment, and I really need to do the thing I need to do. Therefore, I'm going to invest in the next step.
Gotcha.
But so many of us, myself included, have invested in things before we were ready. And you know, in my new book that's coming out, I talked about this idea of the truth of earned confidence, right? So you've got $20,000, and let's just say 1,000 hours of VO training to have earned your confidence to be where you are, to just even start the show. The radio show or the podcast, right? So then somebody else starts, and they shouldn't expect to be where you are, and it wouldn't. It's probably yours is going to be more successful than somebody else who just started, who doesn't have all that experience, probably. But that doesn't mean they can't lap you if you don't keep doing the work.
Right.
But as of right now, like that's you've earned that type of confidence even to be on tape today. So the example I give in the book is, if you're let's just say man A walks in and he decides to learn the piano, and he works on it for about a week, and he learns that Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and he actually learns it. He can play it.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So the truth is, should he be confident? Yes, actually. He can be confident in the fact that he can play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. He can play it. It doesn't mean he can play it easily, but he can play it. Okay. Now, the very next question is, should man A go out and buy a Steinway piano?
Yeah.
Should he have an agent who books him at Carnegie Hall to play the no, because he hasn't earned that, right? So it's like, can he buy a Steinway? Sure, but is he going to be able to nuance that instrument? Like, there's no way. So that's kind of my take on all this stuff is, do it, but there are no shortcuts. You really have to do the work, put in the time, and then, you know, success will follow passion.
I
Right?
like,
I know you were
yeah,
gonna say
I want to
something.
throw down something about the money really quick, because I like what you said. You know, 20,000 sounds scary, right? But what we don't really think about is the return on investment. And not just in the acting world, not just in what you're doing with your voiceover, but we talk about it a lot in our classes. We're developing people, you know. We're developing people to grow and become better versions of themselves, and then go out in the world and inspire others to do the same. So you think about something like working on your voice and taking classes on your voice. There's so many things that you're getting a return on. If you continue to work it in the way that Matt talks about, there's no way you're not successful. You know, there's no way.
Well, and take Jimin, for instance. He's already used it at his work to do different commercials and different things. He's already used it probably in the boardroom, and probably, you know, the amount of confidence you get on the inside, it definitely, you know, it comes out.
Absolutely. And so that's purely there, and then like you said, in the confidence in your family life, and like in all these other areas, like you're growing, and then it's easy to forget that. It's easy to like forget where it came from. And it came from all those hours and hours of investing on you. And then when you do that, that's when you can set yourself up for success. And hey, so Jim, so let's move on to this radio versus podcast debate here. And I'm just curious, why do you want to, why is radio in your mind in the first place? Is it just that's what you know?
Well, I like being in the studio. Obviously you're in a studio. It's probably that whole thing about the effort expended, right? In other words, if you get on a radio station, they already have people that follow them, that listen in. My theory would be that you could reach a broader audience faster. That's my thought.
Sure.
Okay. The trade-off to that is, I've researched it, to do a regular show a couple times a week, at a reasonable time, you're going to spend $3,200 a month, $1,800, $2,000 minimum. So, I mean, that's a big commitment to get a show started. And I always thought, well, I'll just get on the radio. I've got a voice, I got a face for radio, the whole thing. I mean, the bottom line is I'll just get on the radio. The reality is, they'll know that I should be. And the reality is, there's still, radio stations are struggling. The people that make the big bucks, the Rush Limbaughs and the like, are they make $1 million, $2 million, $20 million. That's great. But most of the folks are not making that much. And a lot of folks get started by having to invest a lot regularly. So I guess you put that all together and say radio, seems like it would reach a broader distribution. But podcasting, you can, if you get good at it and you get a following and you use social media right? That's the other issue, is how do you build an awareness in this new age? Because for me, it's new.
Yeah.
How do we take, Mornings with Matt and expand it to where, someday we've got every morning, 500,000 people listening.
And you know what? I don't know, or else I would have it already. But my theory is this. We other than we took a week, and then we took another week for Valleywood. So maybe besides say about 10 days.
We
maybe
only took 1 week so far.
Okay, so 1 week. We took 1 week off.
Recorded the other ones.
But we haven't missed a day, basically.
Yeah.
My thought is consistency. Over time, eventually, and the content's got to be good, of course. Like, you have to be putting out good stuff, but eventually that's going to happen. It's funny, like, I didn't, you never know who's listening, because, you look at numbers on one side and it's like, okay, YouTube shows one thing, our podcast numbers show a totally different number, which is usually way higher. And then and you don't know exactly what to trust. And then YouTube's numbers, like, they don't actually come back to you or even show publicly for, sometimes a week. And so you're always playing catch up on these analytics. So in the beginning, you really just got to worry about your content. Is my content good? And what is it, the message I'm trying to put out there? Okay, that's number one. Number two is, let's look at that investment. So if you're, let's say you're willing to spend $2,500 a month. Okay, cool. Now it's like, all right, what do I get from the radio? I get I get the equipment, it's already there. I get the studio, that's already there, and I get a somewhat of a built-in audience that didn't ask for me. You know, they didn't sign up for me. They didn't subscribe to me, but I get them, you know, ideally, and I get a chance to win them over. Because otherwise, here's the thing: those listeners that are already on that radio station, they're not gonna stay listening to you. You still have to earn those people, you know. So the first time they hear you, they're either gonna go, "Oh, cool, new voice that I like," or they're gonna go, "Ah, who's this guy?" And they're gonna switch channels, you know.
Right.
So you go, okay. So with my $2,500, what could I do with my own marketing and with my own building my own stuff? And in which way is my return on investment? You know, say over a year or 5 years, which way do I think it's going to come back to me bigger? And I don't really know the answer. I think that may be different for different people.
Yeah,
it's kind of like publishing your own book versus having a publisher do it for you. You know, if you go through a publisher, you got to pay usually. Once you get in there and they accept you, then all of a sudden, you know, you get like, I think it's like 10% or something of your book. And that's the downside. The positives are they get it out there. You know, they get it out to the world. I did self-publishing, and now because of the book, it did its own kind of success run. We're now in stores everywhere, but it didn't start that way. We didn't get that big bum rush up front. And then, you know, but we get 50% of everything that book makes, and we have zero printing costs still. So so it's a catch-22, and you got to really, like, you know, and I'm not saying, because I don't know, I've never gone the other route, if publishing the other way would have been better for us. I really have no idea.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing is, and again, any avenue works, but I think there's something dealing with the learning aspect of looking at the future and sort of where things are heading, and starting to use that to your advantage and learning it. And either way, just learning it. And I think a testament to that is the way that Joey has learned about some of the podcasts. Like, I remember when he came in and started showing us the charts and the analytics on it, and going like, oh yeah, and now we're on this thing and on this, and we're on, I don't even know all the names of Apple podcasts, and we're on this podcast.
Which we had the highest listening last month that we've ever had.
It's awesome. It's and it's a testament to the work, because you go through and you had to learn those platforms a little bit. And it's the same with our camps. We're learning, like, we learned how to put it on IMDb and go through that process, but it's a process. Like, you got to really learn it.
That's a really good example too, because it was hard in the beginning to get all that right, but then by the time I was done trying to host on all these platforms and stuff, there were platforms that were hosting us automatically without me doing it, because they're like, oh, this podcast is on it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, like, we want this on our smaller streaming platform, and we're going to do it for you. Yeah. And so then you get to that point where, like you said, you don't know who's listening, but clearly somebody looked at it on one of these platforms that I was going to apply for, and it's already there, and I'm like, cool. Clearly.
Yeah, so an example of that for me was when I posted this. You know, I haven't posted a lot of podcasts, so I asked around, you know, which kind of hashtags should I use on Instagram? You know, I mean, simple stuff like that. It's like, you know, whatever. And then I thought, you know what, I think I'll just Google podcast hashtags. And all of a sudden, boom, comes up these paragraphs of hashtags, and you can literally copy them, and then you can edit them out. And as soon as I posted, you know, the deal about the podcast, all of a sudden I start getting on Instagram followers that pick that up, including podcast groups and things like that. Yeah. So, you know, how that whole mystical thing in social media works and how that all comes together, we know it works. I don't know enough about it.
I want to tell you,
I don't know that I need to.
I want to tell you my theory here, because I actually,
that's great.
What did you do? Okay, so we all, let's be honest, we all have a little something self-serving in everything we do. That's just human nature.
100%.
But truthfully, if you shared the podcast that you're about to be on, there's a little bit of something cool, like, hey, I'm on a podcast, but it's also, you're helping our show. That's the truth, right? And I think that there's something very attractive about giving to other people. So for us, when we have a guest on, we make it all about the guest. I mean, you become the hero of the show. You're the hero of the thumbnail. Like, it's all about you. We really sincerely want to lift you up. So by doing that, I think people can relate to that, and they get excited about connecting in with someone who's not trying to brag about themselves, but they're trying to legitimately help others. So people could see that when they see your post, and they're like, hey, I'm going to be on this podcast, and you're posting for the right reasons. People react in a positive way to that kind of information.
Right.
I even had somebody just yesterday, a guy we work with. He said he does like a lot of our construction work around here, and so he like happened to listen to the show one morning, and he's been kind of following and messaging ever since. And he said his wife accidentally overheard the show in the background for a couple days in a row. And she's like, you know, I really like those speeches that guy gives. I like, it's really nice. He's like, it makes me want to go to work, makes me want to, like, you know, be productive. And he's like, yeah. But I realized, like, that's a way the show grows right there organically, because there's someone listening who found it. Now his wife was sort of passively introduced to it. They happen to be in the Hispanic community. Before you know it, she might be spreading it to her friends, and then we might have a whole following that I never even knew where it came from. But there you go. And then this particular guy too, he not only owns a construction company, but he also owns a boxing company. And now he's telling me that he wants to get all of his boxers on the show, because he's like these you need to like whip these guys into shape. And I'm like, all right, you know, we'll do that. But again, like that's I think the way that the whole thing snowballs is just content.
The posts, they're available to share. So I've got a buddy who was going to be out on the golf course at 7, so he can watch it live. But the idea that he asked, hey, you know, connect me with it, and the ability to reshare it and spread it and have others share it, and you know that it's that kind of, again, you know, the growth of it in the shalom theory, right? You just do it, and all of a sudden you're helping. And I totally agree with your deal. I mean, I noticed that even in the picture in the post, you know, it says with Matt Daring kind of very subtly up in the corner. You know, it's not screaming, you know, Matt. And I totally agree with you that when we're supporting each other, you know, I just think there's a lot of really important energy in that's positive, and I think that's fantastic. So, but I don't know how to. All I know is that I just have to keep learning. Yeah, like you said, you've got to keep learning this stuff, and then you don't know what that combination is going to be that boom, all of a sudden triggers.
And you know what might be a fun experiment, actually, because I was thinking about this earlier when you were talking about radio. Because I remember now way back when I did a little bit of that research too, about just like, do I want to start a radio show kind of thing. But the truth is, I just was not ready. Like, I'd be more ready now than I've ever been.
Yeah, for sure.
So when I heard you kind of reminding me of that process, it could be something where that's either an ongoing or even just like a over a time expense that's just used to market back to your podcast, really.
Okay.
Because if you look at a lot of the radio personalities, they're starting to have their own podcasts also. Mm-hmm. And so they're starting to transition some of that. You know, we work with Frank Caliendo, and he works with, what's his name, on his podcast? Dave. Is it Dave?
No. It's...
I don't know. I'm forgetting.
Looking it up.
Guy from 98. Doesn't matter. John Holmberg. John Holmberg.
Ah, yeah.
It came together.
John Holmberg in the morning. Yeah. Anyway,
I think that's the first time on this show we've just like all gone.
Yeah, I'm like trying to find it.
I was just going to start throwing names out.
But you know, so Holmberg in the morning. I mean, he's huge. I mean, he's a massive name. Frank Caliendo, massive name. And they're podcasting together. They have a very, very successful podcast. You know, and so, you know, good for them. But I remember, because I was training Frank at the time. He's like, hey, I'm gonna start podcasting. podcasting, and he kind of even like invited me to be a part of it at first, and I ended up not getting to do that. But at first I was like, yeah, man, I'll just be your producer and just stay quiet. Like that sounds awesome to me. And but his philosophy up front is he goes, Matt, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to build this amazing studio at my house, and then I'm just going to it's going to be available for free for anybody who comes to town. Because he knows a lot of like comedians, up and coming comedians and whatnot, and he's like, anybody who happens to be in town who needs a podcast space, they're just going to get access to mine for free. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. And he's like, well, why would I do that? And I'm like, I guess the connections and stuff. He's like, well, yeah, but here's the deal. If they come to my place and do the podcast for free at my place, it'll get known that this is the place to go, but I get to be on all their podcasts. And like that's a sacrifice for me because it's my time and I'm donating my name to their podcast. But guess what? All their followers now get to come back to mine. Yes. So he's like, every time I do that, it's a pull back my way. But it starts from just a giving mentality and not wanting anything in return, but just understanding that probably that will be the return on investment as long as he shows up and does his job and he's excellent on their podcast. They're going to go, who is this funny guy? And they're going to want to go follow him.
Did he do it in the De Niro voice when he told you that? I'm just curious. Because it sounded like something that he could do in the De Niro voice.
Yeah. I wish I could do it, but I can't. But yeah, no.
I mean, I would love to see you try, putting you on the spot, just try things.
Yeah. I probably.
So it's so great to know on that basis that you guys have now just offered the studio to me to run my podcast. That'll be just fantastic.
Is that crazy? Is that what you heard?
Joey will be set up.
Where's the laugh button? Oh, there it is. That's very funny. That was great. You should though come down here. I think one of your other questions was about master classes.
Yes.
Ask me about that because I'm gonna give you a pretty hardcore answer.
Well, based on what we've talked about, I mean, I think my reaction is that I ought to come down and participate in the classes and spend the money and take the time and learn and get better at everything. So that's my gut reaction.
But for everybody else, what was the question?
Oh, the question is, let me see if I can find it here.
I think it was something like,
how would master classes fit into my acting career?
How would master classes fit into my acting career? Okay, great. And this is a question for everybody. If you're like, hey, how does the acting class, how does the master class fit into my acting career? My answer to you is this: you don't have an acting career if you're not training. Period. You just don't. Yeah. So you flip the script on that and go like, how big of an acting career do I want to have? How good do I want to get? And it doesn't matter if you train with us or you train wherever, but you need to be in a master. You have to get into the hardest class you can get into, and hopefully you can't get into some of these classes, and then you have to earn your way in. And just thinking about, if you're not training every day at whatever you're doing, aren't you in the financial world, right?
Yes.
So imagine going 3 months without understanding what's happening in the market. And then making a decision or going to work. Like you would never, ever do it. Right. But for some reason, people feel like in the entertainment world that they get to just have days off and weeks off and months off, and that they get to just show up on set. And you know what? You might be good enough. You might get the gig, but you're not going to end up in that place where people are wowed by your performance, where you're going to get repeat customers. Because that's a whole big part of the acting is my day job concept is the producers and directors, they are your customers. If you're an actor, they're your customers. So you need to show up. You have to deliver such an amazing product that they're like, who is this person? Then you just keep in contact with them. And next thing you know, they're hiring you regularly without having to audition. And that's where you'd like to get yourself to in your career. But you got to earn that kind of thing. And the only way that they get wowed is when you show up that you've done so much training that they're like, how have I not heard of this person? And then guess what? If they don't cast you until 6 months later, you better be better than you were the last time they saw you, because they're going to be better. Like their filmmaking will be better. Like everything about them will be better. And if you're not better, then you haven't like kept up. They'll find the next person. I mean, it's that easy because it's money at the end of the day. They need to make money on you, and you should see it that way. You should see your product as like an Apple computer and go like, would I ever buy an old one? Like if the new one comes out and I had the option, I'm gonna get the newer version. And is Apple ever gonna stop improving?
No.
They never will. So we have to look at that in ourselves and go, okay, let's be honest about our own craft and go, all right, I should be seeking the worst, the hardest, the most critique so that I can continue to better what this instrument that's going on inside.
So just really quick to repeat for the Instagram audience, because I thought it was so cool. So the question again was, with the masterclass, how do you fit masterclass into the acting career? Would you say it one more time, just right for our Instagram?
Yeah. So the idea is you don't have an acting career if you're not training and taking class. It's the truth.
I know.
Like,
I just love when you say it so bluntly, when it's so truthful, and I wanted them to hear it because I missed that first part. And
why don't you show them me smiling afterward too? Because I do get intense, but
we got the smile right there.
But it's so true. Just stop thinking that you're a professional actor if you don't treat it professionally.
Yeah, that's true.
You can't be a professional race car driver without practicing, without having a coach that teaches you certain things, you know? It would never happen. So there is no shortcut in life, in acting, period. It's all the same.
Yeah.
Joey's nodding his head like, why you giddy, bro?
This.
Huh?
I'm just loving it.
Oh, good.
Loving the.
And I guess the opportunity is that when you really learn more, you know, as you get better at things, you get better opportunities. You get to have bigger opportunities. But it's also, there's a lot of fun when you know you've nailed something. You know, when you've nailed a part or what have you, and everybody gets it that's been watching it. You know, there's no better feeling than that. You know, it's like closing a big deal in business or what have you. And I think, you know, for me, the balance is, you know, how much time I want to put into an acting career while I've got another career.
Right.
And how do I spend that time? But I, you know, one thing I'll say is I always, time just flies by, and I always love in this environment, you know, being where we are right now. And anytime I've done any acting classes, anytime I've done any voice, so I mean, it's all the same. I just get lost in it. So, you know, again, that's just a matter of me stepping up, having the discipline to say, I'm going to do a class. I'm going to be in a class, you know, every week, you know, and it's just going to become part of what I do. You know, it's that D word again. I'm just going to commit to it, commit the resources to it. I'm going to get better at it. And you know, in my life, it's always been that if I've been willing to do that and I stay consistent with it, I get a result that I never even imagined I was going to get. Right?
Exactly. And I find that the people who really get it, they get to a point where the gig gets in the way of the training, and they're like, I gotta miss. They're sincerely bummed that they can't get better today because they got to go do the gig. And I'm like, go. What are you talking about? Go. And that's the idea, is like, be grateful for it, but realize that doesn't define you. You know, what defines you is your own work ethic, your own discipline. And I wanted to say one last thing too, on the reverse side of the, you know, when you have that opportunity and you know you're ready for it and you crush it, and you know, even you're beyond the skill level needed, and so you just show up and you just nail it. On the reverse side of that, there's nothing worse than getting an opportunity that you weren't prepared for.
That's very true.
We had somebody on the show who discussed that, an LA actor who, you know, had kind of he had gotten by on his looks, and he's a very handsome young man, you know, and just kind of like worked his way through the industry, but wasn't grinding on the craft. And he gets this big opportunity. I think it was for Silicon Valley, and all the lead stars are there, and it's like this big, huge deal. And then he couldn't perform under that pressure, and the truth is, he probably just hadn't earned it. And so then when that happened, and it was a huge confidence, like, just nail in him, that like, we're still working on helping him get over that thing. Yeah, and so, so you look at this and you go, you think you want the lead actor in a show. Like, you think you want that. Trust me, if you're not ready, you do not want the kind of ridicule and, you know, just absolute negative reviews and all the stuff that are going to come from you trying to be a lead in a network show when you're not good at acting. Like, there's probably nothing worse than the public scrutiny that a lead actor gets when a show's not good.
And if anybody wants to just go back and check that out, that is Brett Billmeyer's episode. that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And it's called "Don't Give Up on the Finish Line," and it's under the Mornings with Matt playlist. Which, by the way, you talk about learning. You can go back and look at these. Like we've got hundreds of them, like literally hundreds. So I just like when you reference these because we learn from it too. Like we watch these guests and we're learning from you guys as well. So
hundreds.
Hundred and some.
So
I was gonna say
right. 100 and some.
Hundreds.
So I had a reviewer once review one of the early movies I did, and it wasn't a good movie. I'm not even gonna mention the name. But I was actually, what's funny is at least I had progressed far enough that I was like, this reviewer is actually a good reviewer because their review is really creative. The guy writes, it was like a 1-star review, I think, out of 5. And he writes, I've never wanted a shrimp fork more so I could like stab my eyeballs out in there or something like that. And I was like, that's a very specific insult. Like I really, really like appreciate that.
Wow, that's really graphic.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny, it's like that was a smaller movie, you know, it was like a local deal and you know, whatever. And then of course, like the producer pushed it forward and got it out in distribution. And I even know it was out. And next thing you know, I see this review and I'm like, oh, that's a bummer, you know, but I didn't see it till like 5 years later after I'd already done the project. And I kind of like, I want to review and go, I agree. You know?
But aren't you happy? Aren't you happy you weren't dwelling on that, like waiting for the release day and all the crazy stuff that like we talk about worrying about the gig. But if you were, like, if that was going to be the height of your week, month, year, whatever, and you're just waiting and then that review comes through and you see it the day it shows up, that sucks, man.
Yeah.
Versus, like, seeing it 5 years later, you're like, yeah, I agreed with him. Like it's funny how that works, but probably in the moment, if you saw that, you would have been proud of it still.
Yeah, and it's funny because they're not all going to be winners, you know. I mean, that's just the way it is too. Yeah, I mean, you look at there's some Samuel L. Jackson movies that are not good, and you know, there's some there's like every great actor has like a couple bad movies, and probably even more than that are hidden someplace that are not good, right?
Yeah.
And so if you do enough of it, you work on your craft enough, eventually that one comes through where, and let's be honest, for something to be great, and we're talking about Rush Limbaugh, we're talking about whoever, like, you know, these personalities, for something to be really, really, really great and transformative, you got to have a lot of things going your way, like a lot.
Absolutely.
You know, like a movie's got to be the right script, the right editing, the right cinematographer, the right actor chemistry, the right talent on set. The right marketing.
The marketing is huge. I have a director client who put a beautiful film together, and it's really just spectacular to me. And it was critically reviewed as everything else, but it didn't get wide distribution. It's called The 12th Man, and it's just an incredible movie. And the way he portrays the lead actor in this, as this actor deals with the elements. Anyway, long and short of it is, it should have an incredible following.
Where do we find this? Is this movie out there right now?
Yeah, it's called The 12th Man.
But where is it? Where can we find it? Is it you?
Oh, on Netflix. It's on Netflix. I mean, but I mean, I don't know for sure, but I mean, specifically.
Well, because I was going to say your friend's very lucky because now we just mentioned it on this show. Mm-hmm. So I mean, that's there's going to be a pretty big uptick, I believe, in the 12th Man viewers.
It'll go way up now. Exactly. Yeah.
So, at least 4. Like, at least give me 4.
Here's the thing, Jim. My mom will watch it.
She's the one that gave the review about the shrimp fork in the eyeball.
That's
ooh, ouch.
All right, Jim. Well, I think we're gonna wrap it up here. You got anything else you wanna add here at the end?
No, I just want to say I think every time I have an opportunity to interface with you guys, to do anything with you, it's just such a positive experience. You know, I know it comes from where your heart is at, and you can feel that, and I get it from you. You know, you're incredibly professional. It's just always a joy to be part of everything that I do with you. So I just bless you on that and wish you continued success, and love the way you guys work together. Love the energy. You know, just keep doing it, and let's all learn together.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And we we respect you very much as well, and wish you good luck. And you should go out and do that show about God. I really think that's an important thing. All people need to hear about it, and be brave and be very specific, and you'll reach an audience, and hopefully you'll hit people that need to hear it, not just people who are singing to the choir.
I would agree. Right. Yeah. That's
all right, man. Well, God bless you. Thanks so much for being on the show.
You too.
Appreciate it. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Guys. This has been Mornings with Matt. Please do not forget to like, subscribe, and share this channel. Help us spread this light-driven content to the planet.
Thanks for listening to Mornings with Matt. Please like, subscribe, and follow us at Deering Acting Studio to keep up with the latest content. For more information on classes, private lessons, or professional development coaching, visit www.deeringstudio.com. Have a Deering day, everyone.